So recently, Democrats have been on the attack against the Koch brothers. Harry Reid has called them un-American, among different things. They're starting to even run ads against them. The reason for that is because the Koch brothers have already spent an unprecedented $30 million on the 2014 campaigns. The election is in November. They spent the $30 million in March and earlier. I've never seen anything like that. Now, of course, when they are counterattacked, the Koch brothers are up in arms. They're like, how could you? We only spent $30 million and we've got hundreds of millions of dollars backing that up, trying to crush you all across the country. I can't believe you would lay a glove on me. Well, sad day for you. For the first time ever, the Democrats are on the attack. So Charles Koch decided that he was going to do an op-ed and defend himself. Now, I think this is an extraordinarily bad idea, but I'm glad he did it, because we will point out all of the things that he says that are not true. So he wrote in the Wall Street Journal. Funny how it's in the Wall Street Journal. Didn't see that coming. It was only in the past decade, he says, that I realized the need to also engage in the political process. All right, now let me explain the reality to you guys. Daniel Fisher wrote in Forbes magazine, so the revolution, referring to the Koch brothers, has been an evolution, with roots going back half a century to Koch's first contributions to libertarian causes and Republican candidates. In the mid-1970s, their business of changing minds got more formal when Charles co-founded what became the Cato Institute, the first major libertarian think tank. Now, Charles Koch thinks, well, I was just in the education business. That wasn't politics. He also founded the Heritage Foundation, which is massively political, the biggest right-wing think tank there is, the Federalist Society, and then something called the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. All of these for 50 years. And he comes on here like,
well, he wasn't the sole founder of those, of
right.
The other ones.
The Cato Institute sole founder, the others co-founder. So now he comes on and says, oh, poor little me, I just wandered into this politics thing because I'm so concerned about freedom and liberty just 10 years ago. I didn't know it was a rough sport like this. Oh, yeah, I know. You've been basically trying to buy politicians and do these think tanks for literally half a century. And golly gee, you didn't know anything about what was going on. So he continues about his earnest desire to help. And if you're unaware, they have, Charles and David Koch are among the two richest people in the world, top 20. And they have, I think, over $30 billion apiece.
Yeah, arguably together, they form the wealthiest person in the world. And
they might have some interest in lower taxes. They might have some interest in deregulating their factories, but it turns out, no, liberty. He's interested in liberty. So let me give you more Charles Koch. A truly free society is based on a vision of respect for people and what they value. In a truly free society, any business that disrespects its customers will fail and deserves to do so. The same should be true of any government that disrespects its citizens. Now, this is hilarious, and you hear John laughing about it because here's a guy who buys off the politicians so that they will not listen to their citizens. So he says, look, I give you the money and you do what I tell you to do. Mm-hmm. In fact, in Kansas, at the state level, there was conservative Republicans obviously controlling the state legislature, but the problem was they were not loyal enough to the Koch brothers. And the Koch brothers came in there and flooded Kansas with money. And at the state level, it doesn't take that much. And to give you a sense of context, in 2012, they spent $400 million that we know of in that election cycle. So they came into Kansas, they got rid of the conservative Republicans, and they put in Koch loyalists. So the idea that he cares about government representing its citizens is the most ironic thing you could hear from a Koch brother. Yeah. So now, a couple more quotes here. He says, the more government tries to control, the greater the disaster, as shown by the current healthcare debacle. It's interesting that he points that out in his op-ed, because earlier we brought a story to you. One of the groups that they fund, the leader of that group, Tim Phillips, said, we wanted to set an example with the healthcare case, because they don't actually have any business involved in healthcare, but they said, but we wanted to make sure that everybody saw that government fails so they don't try anything in climate change, because the main business of Koch Industries is energy, oil and other things related to the oil industry and gas industry. So they wanted to show, oh, you see, healthcare was a debacle. You don't want the government regulating anything else like the energy industry. So this is one giant propaganda piece disguised as an aw shucks. All right, now, a couple more here. Instead of encouraging free and open debate, he says collectivists try to discredit and intimidate opponents. They engage in character assassination. I should know as the almost daily target of their attacks.
Oh, poor guy.
I feel really bad for him.
Yeah, we all do. I wonder how he feels about the $30 million he spent doing character assassination of not only just the candidates in those particular races, but also President Obama.
President Obama, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the ads would say, like, President Obama lied to us. And then they would then have, like, oh, I'm going to die because Obamacare took my plan away.
Right.
And then they would, of course, show that that's not the case. That particular woman in that story with the cancer actually would have gotten lower payments through the new health care plan that she got. It would have been better for her. Yeah. And so there's no one better versed in the politics of character assassination than the Koch brothers. They just happen to be outraged that it's now turned on them. And in this case, they're not being attacked with falsehoods. They're being attacked with reality. They are buying these politicians. That's what the specific political attack ads are saying. They're saying these Republican politicians are funded and backed by the Koch brothers. So understand who's controlling them. So I know I have too many quotes here, but these are all great.
Because you have to take it apart piece by piece to show that
there's so much.
that everything is false.
Yeah, and it's one giant ploy. He says, such tactics are the antithesis of what is required for a free society, and a telltale sign that the collectivists do not have good answers. Well, if people who do character assassination, as the Koch brothers have been doing for half a century, basically, that's Koch brothers 101, shows that they do not have good answers, it's interesting. Maybe it's a tell of what he thinks of his side. Like, I can't really justify that I just want to pay less taxes and I want to be able to pollute into the rivers that I pollute into. I don't have any good answers, so I just buy them off, and that's what I do, so I assume they do the same thing. Classic projection.
I love that they feel the need to respond, though. I mean, you got a couple of statements out of Harry Reid, and this guy is insanely wealthy, not just today, but historically. He's wealthier than the ancient emperors of the world, but he's still a person, and it hurts him. And he, in his mind, probably thinks that, yeah, what I'm doing is probably great for the average American. It is actually improving the economy. And in his defense, I don't know that what he's doing is necessarily un-American. I think that there's a pretty long and proud tradition in America of wealthy industrialists stepping on the poor and buying our politicians. So it's nothing new that the Kochs have pioneered or anything like that.
It's not new at all. It's just that, and it's supported by law, unfortunately, and that's what has to change. So you're not going to change people like the Koch brothers and others. I mean, listen, they're not going to change they're not going to listen to the criticism and say, maybe you guys are right.
Yeah. So there's 2 points in this op-ed that he's doing. One is what John said. They don't wake up thinking they're evil and look in the mirror every morning and go, boo-ha-ha-ha, right? No, they have to justify it to themselves. They got to live with themselves, right?
And they're not 100% evil either.
Sure, of course. So like they do give a decent amount of money to cancer research. I recently realized why. Turns out their whole family has a history of cancer. So it affects them. So they're like, well, let's solve it. But it's still good. It's still a good thing.
Anything that's convenient for them.
And they also do give to the art. I mean, you can't argue with their philanthropy. It's the stuff that they do with the rest of their money that you can get upset about.
Right.
I mean, and listen, most wealthy people, not Donald Trump, are quite philanthropic, and thank goodness, because we have so much of what we have because of the philanthropy of the wealthy. But these people will trade their philanthropy if they just get rid of what they're doing to hurt the country.
Yeah.
I just have to make a really quick point about what he said about the Koch brothers being involved in education initially, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control, and all of a sudden they found themselves in politics. Their involvement in education was strictly to indoctrinate. Okay, so if you look at the funding that they put into science research, it's about paying off so-called scientists to publish so-called studies where they say that, hey, you know what, climate change is not man-made, or mining for coal or drilling for oil doesn't lead to an environmental disaster. So that's what it's really about. And they fund a lot of universities, science programs in public universities in order to basically indoctrinate those students. And they'll say, no, we have no influence, but I'm not buying it. Why would the Koch brothers all of a sudden be interested in funding entire departments at these universities?
In many cases, that comes with strings attached.
Yes.
You can only hire,
So it's not a hypothesis. We've covered stories where they said, no, not that professor, that one, meaning one that is friendly to us. So it's not that they're interested in science, it's just that they're interested in buying off some scientists so they can have the veneer of science backing them up when they go to do their pollution, et cetera, right? Yeah. And look, these guys got to live with themselves, and so, for example, the way that they made their money, the Koch family in the first place. Now, they grew that money in other ways, right? But their father, Fred Koch, literally made his fortune from contracts he got with Stalin. Okay, so that's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a New World Order thing. It's in every biography of the Koch family. And so then he felt terrible about it. And Stalin actually apparently killed a bunch of the people that he worked with that were Russians, right? Yeah. After he left. But he didn't return the money or anything. He didn't return it to the Russian people. He didn't return it to the American people. He kept it. And that vast fortune is what the Koch brothers then built into an even bigger fortune. So they've got a lot of, certainly Fred Koch had the guilt about how they made the money in the first place, and that's why he founded the John Birch Society, which is a massively right-wing thing. Like, okay, I made all my money from Stalin, but I founded the John Birch Society. Okay, right. These poor this Koch family, though, they've never been political. It's just the last 10 years. Yeah. Okay, so, and he says here, this is my favorite because it's the most disingenuous. About 1/3 of our U.S.-based employees are union members. Yeah. Oh, now wait a minute. Now you're bragging about that? If the Koch brothers are known for anything, it's for being anti-union. They, in fact, purchased Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, and we know because there was a fake call from David Koch placed to Walker, and Walker's like, "Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir?" When he thought it was actually David Koch, he's like, "Well, I know. I'm trying to crush the union." You see that response, right? And so they love Walker because it was part of their overall half-a-century strategy of you whittle down the union because then you have less union people working for you, you pay them lower wages, and you make more money. So for him to come out here and brag that 1/3 of his workers are union when he's been trying to hammer that number down and he would love for it to be 0, and we know that, it shows you how disingenuous he is and what a liar he is.
Yeah. Maybe the end of the quote was, "For now."
And of course, the second reason to do this editorial is to influence the media.
Yeah.
So the media will say, well, the Democrats say this, but Charles Koch says that.
Right. And it looks like it's working.
Yeah, and so that they can call it 50-50.